Welcome, dear friends, to an enchanting evening where we leave the bustling world behind and step into a realm of fairy tales. Tonight, we embark on a journey through timeless classics brought to life by the legendary brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen. These stories are filled with magic, wisdom, and wonder, the perfect companions to guide you toward a peaceful, restful sleep as you settle into your cozy spot. Let the charm of these tales wrap around you like a warm blanket. From the gentle lessons of the Frog King to the poignant beauty of the Little Mermaid and the heartwarming transformation in Cinderella, each story carries with it a unique world of enchantment. They remind us that no matter the challenges we face, magic always lingers just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. Tonight, let your mind wander into these fairy tale realms where dreams and reality entwine. Make yourself comfortable and allow these stories to transport you to places where anything is possible, where frogs turn into princes, mermaids dance beneath the waves, and the humblest of hearts find their happily ever afters. So relax, breathe deeply, and let these beloved tales weave their magic around you as we drift into a world of imagination and peaceful dreams. Once upon a time, in a kingdom nestled between rolling hills and enchanted forests, there lived a beautiful princess named Elara. Her beauty was not just in her appearance, but in the kindness that radiated from her heart. She spent her days tending to the gardens, caring for animals, and exploring the vast meadows that surrounded her royal home. Her love for nature was known to all, and her compassion for even the smallest creatures made her beloved by the people of the kingdom. One bright and sunny afternoon, Princess Elara ventured to a quiet pond hidden deep within the forest, its waters as clear as crystal. The pond was a favorite spot of hers, where she often came to relax and reflect. On this day she was playing with her golden ball, tossing it high into the air and watching it glint in the sunlight. She laughed as it bounced off the water, feeling light-hearted and free, but then with one careless toss the ball slipped from her grasp and fell into the pond. She gasped in shock as she watched it sink slowly beneath the surface, its golden shimmer disappearing into the murky depths. "Oh no!" she cried, her heart sinking. "My beautiful ball! It's gone forever." She knelt by the edge of the pond, peering into the water, but it was too deep to reach. Her fingers brushed the water's surface, but the ball was nowhere to be seen. Desperate to retrieve it, she sat down on the bank, her eyes filled with sorrow. Her heart longed for the ball, for it was not just a toy, it had been a gift from her late mother, and it held sentimental value. As her tears began to fall, a soft, croaky voice interrupted her sorrowful thoughts. "Why do you weep, princess?" Startled, Elara looked around. Sitting on a lily pad in the middle of the pond was a frog. Its eyes were wide and curious, and its green skin glistened in the sunlight. The frog looked at her with a kind yet mischievous gaze. "I've lost my golden ball," the princess explained, still sniffling. "It fell into the pond, and now I can't get it back." The frog blinked thoughtfully for a moment before speaking again. "I can help you retrieve your ball, princess, but in exchange, you must promise me something." Elara, still disoriented from the loss, looked at the frog, unsure of what to make of the situation. "What do you want in exchange?" she asked, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I will fetch your ball," the frog said, "but in return you must promise to be my friend and allow me to stay with you. I would like to live in your palace, eat from your plate, and sleep in your bed." "If you agree, I will bring you the golden ball." Elara, who could hardly believe her ears, laughed. "You are but a frog. What could you possibly want with a place at the royal table? But you have my word, I promise you, you shall be my friend." The frog smiled, his eyes twinkling with satisfaction. "Then I shall retrieve your ball, princess." With a graceful leap, the frog dove into the water, disappearing beneath the surface. Moments later, he emerged with the golden ball in his mouth, its surface gleaming even brighter than before. The frog swam back to the shore and placed the ball gently at the princess's feet. "Here is your ball," the frog said, his voice low and calm. "And now, remember your promise." Elara, relieved to have the ball back, smiled and picked it up. "Thank you, frog," she said lightly, her tone filled with indifference. "But what use is a friendship with a frog? Surely a mere promise is enough." Without another word, she turned and walked away, not looking back to see the frog's disappointed face. She felt no real attachment to the creature, only a fleeting sense of duty fulfilled. The next day, Princess Elara was in her chambers, preparing for dinner, when there came a soft knock at the door. She opened it to find the frog standing there, looking up at her with those same wise, knowing eyes. "I have come to claim my promise," the frog said, his voice firm yet gentle. "You promised that I would stay with you." Ilara's face flushed with embarrassment. She had completely forgotten about her promise. "Oh, but you are a frog. You cannot stay here," she protested, her heart racing. "You are not fit to dine with royalty, nor should you sleep in my bed." The frog gave her a long, steady look before speaking again. "Your promise was made, Princess." "A promise is something sacred, and it must not be broken, no matter how small it may seem." Feeling cornered by her own conscience, Ilara reluctantly let the frog inside. The next few days were filled with awkward moments. The frog insisted on dining with her, eating from the same plate, and even sleeping on a cushion beside her bed. But despite the discomfort she felt, Ilara couldn't deny that something was calming and wise about the frog. He never complained, and he always spoke with kindness, reminding her of the importance of keeping promises. One evening, as Ilara sat by the fire in the castle's great hall, the frog approached her. "Princess, I have stayed by your side, as promised. But now there is one last thing I must ask of you." Ilara looked down at the frog. "What is it you ask?" The frog's eyes shone with an inner light. "Kiss me, Princess." She stared at him in shock. "Kiss you? Why would I do that? You are a frog, and I am a princess." The frog smiled gently. "What I am is not important. It is your heart, your kindness, and your promise that matter." After a long pause, Ilara's heart softened. She had learned so much from the frog, the value of keeping promises, the importance of compassion, and the beauty of finding magic in the smallest of things. With a deep breath, she bent down and kissed the frog gently on the forehead. In an instant, the frog was transformed into a handsome prince, his regal appearance shining like the dawn. Ilara gasped in astonishment, her heart fluttering with surprise. The prince smiled warmly at her. "Thank you, Princess. You have broken the spell with your kindness and your word." From that day on, Princess Ilara and the prince became the best of friends, and their bond grew stronger each day. The prince, once a frog, ruled alongside her with wisdom and grace, teaching her that the smallest promises can carry the greatest weight. And so, the kingdom thrived, and the princess and her prince lived happily ever after, surrounded by the love of nature, kindness, and the magic that only true promises can bring. The story teaches us the importance of keeping our promises, no matter how insignificant they may seem at first. It also reminds us that true magic lies in the seemingly small things, our kindness, our word, and our ability to see the potential in others, even if they seem unlikely to be of any importance. Now that we've witnessed the transformation of the Frog King, let's take a moment to reflect. The lessons from this story remind us that things are not always as they seem. A small promise, a simple gesture, can lead to something magical. We often rush through life, overlooking the power of kindness, the significance of our words, and the unnoticed beauty of the world around us. Yet this tale shows us that even the smallest of acts can create ripples of change, not just in the world, but within ourselves. The princess's initial reluctance to keep her promise was rooted in her perception of the frog as just an ordinary creature. But when she chose to honor her word, she unlocked a magic far beyond her imagination. It's a gentle reminder that the promises we make, whether to others or ourselves, are threads that weave the fabric of our character. Each promise holds the potential to transform, not just the world around us, but also the very person we are becoming. Take a deep breath, feel the peace settling in, and allow yourself to reflect on the journey of the princess and the frog. What promises have you made, both big and small, that have shaped your path? What magic might be hidden in your own words, waiting to be unleashed? As we move forward, let's embrace the magic of every moment. Life is full of lessons, some hidden in simple actions, others wrapped in extraordinary transformations. Just as the frog became a prince, we too are capable of growth, change, and unlocking hidden potential within ourselves. So let's step forward into the next story with an open heart, ready to discover the lessons it holds for us. We have many more tales to unfold tonight, each one offering its own unique magic. Let's continue this journey together, knowing that with each story we are not just listening to tales of old, but embracing the timeless wisdom they offer. The Little Mermaid, far beneath the sparkling waves, in a kingdom made of coral and seaweed, there lived a young mermaid named Marina. She was the youngest of 6 sisters, each of whom spent their days playing in the warm waters of the sea, weaving through the kelp forests and chasing colorful fish. But Marina was different. While her sisters were content to stay within the safety of their underwater world, Marina's heart yearned for something more. She dreamed of the human world, of standing on solid ground, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin, and experiencing life beyond the vast ocean. Every day, she swam up to the surface of the water, gazing longingly at the world above, watching the ships sail across the horizon, and imagining what it might be like to walk, to dance, to be part of the world of humans. She would sing beautiful songs to herself as the waves gently lapped against the shore, her voice carrying through the waters. One fateful day, as Marina swam near the surface, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. A grand ship sailed across the sea, its sails billowing in the wind. The ship was majestic, and standing at the prow was a handsome prince, with dark, kind eyes and a presence that filled her with a sense of awe. In that moment, Marina felt a deep, unexplainable connection to him. She knew with every fiber of her being that she had fallen deeply in love. But then, disaster struck. A sudden storm appeared, fierce and violent, its winds howling and waves crashing against the ship. The ship splintered, and the prince was thrown into the churning sea. The little mermaid's heart raced as she dove into the water, searching through the waves. She found him, unconscious and barely alive, and with all her strength she pulled him to the shore, leaving him safely on the sand. Before leaving, Marina sang a soft, melodic song, the sound of her voice the only trace she left behind. She lingered for a moment, her heart heavy with the desire to tell him who she was. But as the prince stirred and awoke, he saw only the shore and the vast ocean, and her voice remained the only reminder of her presence. He never saw her face, never knew that it was she who had saved him. Days passed, and Marina could not forget the prince. She visited the shore every day, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. But he never came. The memory of the prince and the feeling of love that consumed her heart grew stronger each day. She longed to be with him, to walk beside him, to share a life. But as a mermaid, she was bound to the sea, unable to experience the human world that she so desperately desired. In desperation, Marina visited the sea witch, who was known for granting wishes at a great cost. The sea witch listened to Marina's heart-wrenching plea. "I want to be with the prince," Marina said. "I would trade anything for a chance to walk on land and be with him. Please grant me this wish." The sea witch smiled, but her smile was cold. "I can grant your wish," she said, her voice like the distant echo of a storm. "But there is a price. I will give you legs, but you will lose your voice forever. You will no longer sing, and you will never speak again. If you wish to keep your legs, you must win the love of the prince. If he marries another, you will die, and your soul will belong to the sea." Marina, filled with longing and hope, agreed to the deal without hesitation. "I will do whatever it takes," she said, her voice trembling. Not knowing that the cost of her decision would be far more than she could have imagined, the sea witch cast her spell, and Marina felt a sharp pain as her tail split into 2 legs, human legs, delicate and strange. She could no longer swim as she had before. The sea was no longer her home, but in exchange the world of humans awaited her, and the possibility of love with the prince was within reach. The next day, Marina made her way to the prince's palace, walking awkwardly on her new legs, the world feeling entirely different beneath her. The prince, seeing her for the first time as a human, was captivated by her beauty and the sadness in her eyes. He did not know that this was the mermaid who had saved him, but he felt a deep connection to her nonetheless. He treated her with kindness, and Marina, unable to speak, could only communicate through her eyes and gestures. Days turned into weeks, and Marina's love for the prince grew. Yet the weight of her sacrifice, her lost voice, pressed on her heart. She could no longer sing the songs she once loved, and the silence that enveloped her was deafening. But she was willing to bear it for the chance to be with him, to be part of his world. However, as time went on, the prince's affection for Marina began to wane. He soon became enamored with a princess from a neighboring kingdom, someone he believed to be his true love. Marina, heartbroken, watched as the prince's attention shifted from her to the princess. Despite all the sacrifices she had made, despite the love she had poured into him, the prince's heart belonged to another. One evening, as the prince prepared for his wedding, Marina stood on the shore, the weight of her broken heart nearly too much to bear. The sea witch's curse loomed over her. If the prince married another, she would die. She could feel the darkness closing in, but as she gazed out to sea, her heart was filled with a strange peace. She had loved deeply, and though it had cost her everything, The love she had felt was real. It had transformed her. With the prince's marriage to another, Marina's life began to fade. But in her final moments, she was given a choice. Her soul could return to the sea, or she could become a spirit of the air, a being of pure love forever bound to the wind, watching over the world she had longed to be part of. Marina chose the latter, not for her own sake, but for the love that had shaped her journey. She was free, her soul forever touched by the purity of her sacrifice. This story reminds us that love is both beautiful and painful, and that sacrifices are often required in the pursuit of our dreams. But it also teaches us that while love may not always lead to the happy ending we expect, the depth of the feelings we experience shapes who we are. True love, sacrifice, and the pursuit of our heart's desires can be both a blessing and a curse, but it is the journey, the growth, that makes it worth everything. That was the story of The Little Mermaid, a tale that carries the weight of deep emotions and life-changing choices. As we pause for a moment, let's take a breath and reflect on the courage it took for Marina to follow her heart. She shows us that love is a powerful force, one that can drive us to make sacrifices we never thought possible. But love is not always easy. It demands both vulnerability and strength. Marina's story reminds us that the choices we make in pursuit of our dreams and desires can shape the course of our lives, sometimes in ways we never expected. Her willingness to give up her voice, to trade what was most precious to her for a chance to live in a world she longed for, speaks to the depths of love and longing. But it also highlights the cost of those desires, the sacrifices we must make to achieve what we think we want. It is a powerful reminder that we must be careful what we wish for, as our dreams may carry consequences far beyond what we can foresee. As we take a moment to reflect, let these thoughts drift with you like the waves of the ocean, gentle and steady. The Little Mermaid's journey may not have led to the ending she envisioned, but it was filled with timeless lessons. Love, sacrifice, and perseverance, these are the threads that tie this tale to our own lives. Now, as we prepare for the next story, let the lessons of the mermaid's journey stay with you. Life is a series of choices, each one leading us closer to who we are meant to become. With each story, we continue to explore the magic, the lessons, and the beauty that surrounds us, waiting to be discovered. Cinderella. Once upon a time, in a kingdom where magic danced in the air like fireflies at dusk, there was a kind and gentle young woman named Cinderella. She lived in a modest cottage at the edge of the kingdom with her cruel stepmother, Lady Tremaine, and her two jealous stepsisters, Anastasia and Drizella. The trio treated Cinderella with disdain, forcing her to do all the household chores, cleaning, cooking, and serving them without a moment's rest. They would mock her for her beauty and kindness, calling her names and making her feel as though she was nothing more than a servant in her own home. Despite the constant mistreatment, Cinderella remained kind-hearted and hopeful. She would often retreat to the garden, where she would find solace among the flowers, talking to the birds, and imagining a life beyond the walls of her home. She dreamed of something better, a world where she could be free, happy, and loved. But every time she looked at her stepmother and stepsisters, the reality of her situation set in, and she would return to her duties. Trying to keep her spirits high, one day an invitation arrived from the royal palace. The king and queen were hosting a grand ball, and all eligible young women were invited to attend. The news filled the kingdom with excitement, as the ball was the most anticipated event of the year. When Cinderella heard of the invitation, her heart soared with joy. It was the first time in a long while that something good had come her way, and she allowed herself to dream of wearing a beautiful gown and dancing at the palace with princes and nobles. But her joy was short-lived. When Cinderella shared her excitement with her stepmother, Lady Tremaine's face darkened. "You are not going," she declared, her voice cold and firm. "There is no place for you at the palace. You will stay here and finish your chores." Cinderella's heart sank, but she said nothing. She knew better than to argue with her stepmother, who had already made up her mind. That evening, while her stepsisters prepared for the ball with new dresses and excitement, Cinderella was left alone in the corner of the room, her hopes dashed as the night of the ball approached. Cinderella spent the evening working quietly in the kitchen. She had managed to sew a beautiful dress from some old scraps of fabric, but without the means to make it truly magnificent, it looked plain. She sighed, wishing for just a small piece of magic to make her dreams come true. And then, as if summoned by her wish, a soft twinkling light appeared in the room. growing brighter and brighter until it materialized into her fairy godmother. "Do not despair, my dear," said the fairy godmother, her voice warm and comforting. "Your kindness has not gone unnoticed, and I shall grant you a gift." With a wave of her wand, the fairy godmother transformed Cinderella's tattered dress into a stunning ball gown, made of the finest silks and adorned with sparkling jewels. Her worn shoes turned into delicate glass slippers, and her hair was styled into an elegant updo. "But remember," the fairy godmother warned, "you must leave the ball before the clock strikes midnight. At that hour the magic will fade, and everything will return to how it was." Cinderella was overwhelmed with joy and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. The fairy godmother smiled and gave her a gentle push toward the door. "Now go and make the most of this night. The world is yours to explore." At the ball, Cinderella dazzled everyone with her beauty and grace. The prince, who had been looking for someone to capture his heart, was immediately taken by her. He couldn't take his eyes off her as she glided across the ballroom floor, her laughter ringing like music. The night seemed to stretch on forever, and for the first time, Cinderella felt as though she truly belonged. But as the clock neared midnight, Cinderella remembered her fairy godmother's warning. Panicked, she pulled away from the prince, her heart heavy with the thought of leaving. She rushed down the grand staircase and out of the palace, her glass slippers clicking against the marble floors. In her haste, she lost one of her slippers, and it was left behind on the steps. The prince, unable to catch her in time, was left standing at the palace door, staring after her in confusion and longing. He knew that he had found the woman he had been searching for, but he had no idea who she was, other than the beautiful stranger who had captured his heart. The next day, the prince sent his servants throughout the kingdom with the glass slipper, determined to find the woman who had worn it. He believed with all his heart that she was the one he was meant to marry. When the prince's men arrived at Cinderella's house, her stepsisters eagerly tried on the slipper, but it was too small for them. Then, with great hope, the prince's men called for Cinderella. The stepsisters laughed, convinced that the slipper would never fit her. But when Cinderella tried on the slipper, it fit perfectly. A hush fell over the room as everyone realized that the prince's search had led him to the kind and gentle young woman who had stolen his heart. The prince arrived shortly afterward, his eyes filled with love and recognition. "You are the one," he said, taking her hand. And so Cinderella and the prince were married, and they lived happily ever after. Cinderella's dreams had come true, but not just because of the magic of a fairy godmother. It was her kind heart, her unwavering hope, and her belief that something good would come from her patience and love that made her story truly magical. This story teaches us that kindness, perseverance, and hope can change the course of our lives, no matter the hardships we face. Cinderella's journey reminds us that true beauty lies not in outward appearances, but in the goodness of the heart. And though life may be filled with challenges, if we stay true to who we are and never lose sight of our dreams, happiness and love will eventually find us. Now let's take a moment to reflect on the magical stories we've explored so far. Each one carries with it a timeless lesson that touches the heart and reminds us of the deep truths within ourselves. First, we journeyed with the Frog King, where we learned the importance of keeping promises, no matter how small they may seem. The transformation of the frog into a prince reminded us that the smallest acts of kindness and commitment can lead to profound changes. It was a reminder that true magic often lies in the promises we make to others and to ourselves. Then we delved into the heartache and sacrifice of the Little Mermaid. Marina's journey was one of unyielding love, a love that drove her to give up her most cherished gifts for a chance at happiness. Through her story, we learned that love is powerful, but it often comes with a price. The tale of the Little Mermaid teaches us that our dreams and desires shape our actions, but we must also accept the consequences of the choices we make along the way. Yet even in sacrifice, there is beauty and transformation. Lastly, we encountered Cinderella, whose story of resilience and goodness in the face of adversity reminded us that kindness never goes unnoticed. Though she endured hardship and cruelty from those around her, her goodness led her to a happy ending. Cinderella's journey teaches us that no matter the struggles we face, staying true to our hearts and having hope can bring light into even the darkest of times. Each of these stories holds a lesson that we can carry into our own lives. Whether it's the power of promises, the sacrifices we make for love, or the quiet strength of resilience. We are reminded that the magic in these tales is not just in their plots, but in the truths they hold about the human spirit. Let these lessons guide us as we continue our journey through the night's stories. The 12 Dancing Princesses. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a kind and wise king who had 12 beautiful daughters. They were known throughout the land for their grace, charm, and laughter. The princesses lived in a grand palace, and every night after the royal banquet, the king would lock their doors to ensure that they remained in their rooms, safe and sound, as was the custom. But every morning the princesses' shoes were worn out, as if they had been dancing all night long. The king, puzzled by this mystery, called upon his trusted advisers. He asked them, "Tell me, how is it that my daughters' shoes are always worn out by morning, even though they have been locked in their rooms at night?" The advisers, stumped and bewildered, could not explain. And so the king made a proclamation, "Whoever can uncover the secret of my daughters' nightly adventures shall be rewarded with their hand in marriage and a vast fortune. But anyone who fails to solve the mystery will be sent away in disgrace." News of the king's challenge spread far and wide, and many young men, eager for the reward, came to the palace. They tried to stay awake in the princesses' chambers, but no one could figure out how the princesses managed to wear out their shoes each morning. Some tried to sneak into the palace at night. Others watched the doors, but all efforts were in vain. Days turned into weeks, and the king became frustrated. He threatened to lock away his daughters for good and make them live without joy, just to end the mystery. But there was still one young man, a poor soldier, who had heard of the challenge. He had no wealth or title, but his heart was kind and his mind was sharp. Determined to try, he set off to the palace, willing to give his all to solve the riddle. When the soldier arrived, the king greeted him with the same challenge, to discover how the princess's shoes were always worn out by morning. The soldier, unlike the others, did not make any hasty plans to sneak into the rooms. Instead, he decided to follow a different approach. He would simply wait, observe, and see what happened. That night, when the princesses were preparing for bed, the soldier was given a place to rest by the door. The princesses, unaware of the soldier's presence, went to bed as usual, and the doors were locked. But the soldier had been given a special cloak by a kindly old woman who had been watching over him. It was a cloak of invisibility, allowing him to follow the princesses without being seen. As midnight struck, something magical happened. The doors to the princesses' rooms creaked open, and the young women, with gleaming eyes, rose from their beds. They whispered excitedly to one another, and as the soldier quietly followed them, he saw the most marvelous sight. The princesses were not bound by the walls of their palace. They were going on a secret journey. The princesses led the soldier through hidden corridors and passages, deep into the bowels of the castle. They passed through secret doors and entered a magical forest that appeared to be growing inside the castle's walls. The trees were covered in silver leaves that sparkled like stars, and the air was filled with the soft hum of ancient melodies. The princesses reached a grand, enchanted ballroom where the floor was lit with shimmering lights and a magnificent orchestra played melodies from distant lands. The princesses, dressed in glittering gowns, danced for hours with handsome princes, their laughter echoing through the night. The soldier watched, his heart filled with wonder as the princesses danced and twirled. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. They were not simply sneaking away, they were entering a magical world where their spirits were free, and they could experience the joy of dancing without restraint. But as the first light of dawn began to break through the forest's canopy, the princesses, with one final twirl, returned to the castle, their shoes worn out from the night's festivities. The soldier, following quietly behind them, watched as they slipped back into their rooms, the doors locking once again. The next morning the soldier went to the king and revealed the secret. "Your daughters," he said, "are not sneaking around the palace in the way you think. They are visiting a magical world where they dance and find joy every night. A world that is hidden to all but those who truly believe in its magic." The king, astonished by the soldier's revelation, immediately called the princesses together. "Is this true?" he asked. The princesses, who had kept their secret for so long, finally confessed, each of them sharing their own experiences of the enchanted world they visited every night. The soldier, having uncovered the mystery, was rewarded with the promised fortune and the hand of one of the princesses in marriage. But the soldier, having learned the value of joy and freedom, was not interested in the reward alone. He chose the princess with whom he shared a special bond, a quiet understanding of the magic that lay in the world. Beyond the walls of the palace, in the end, the king, seeing the true happiness of his daughters, allowed them to visit the enchanted world whenever they wished. And the palace was filled with laughter, music, and the joy of freedom. The soldier, now a prince, and his princess lived happily ever after, their lives filled with magic, mystery, and the beautiful. Eternal dance of life. This story teaches us the importance of mystery and magic in our lives. It reminds us that sometimes the world we see on the surface is not the whole picture. There is a magic within all of us, hidden dreams, desires, and secrets that can only be unlocked with patience, understanding, and belief. Life's mysteries are often more beautiful and wondrous than we can imagine, and sometimes the answers lie in the most unexpected places. Just as the princesses danced in secret, we too can find joy and freedom in following our hearts, even when the path is hidden. Thank you for joining me on this magical journey through fairy tales. Together, we've traveled through enchanted forests, magical seas, and royal castles. We've witnessed transformation, sacrifice, love, and the triumph of goodness. These timeless tales have brought with them lessons of kindness, perseverance, and the hidden magic that exists in every corner of life. Now, as the stars twinkle above and the peaceful night settles in, it's time for you to rest. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let these stories fill your dreams with magic, comfort, and wonder. May the kindness of Cinderella, the bravery of the little mermaid, and the mystery of the 12 dancing princesses carry you into a night of peaceful slumber, where dreams are as enchanting as the stories we've shared tonight. Good night, dear listener, and may you journey through dreams as beautiful and magical as the tales we've told. Sleep well, and remember that just like in these stories, there's always a bit of magic waiting for you. Sometimes all you need is a little faith to find it.